Hi, everyone. Welcome back to MusicWise. I'm Donato Cabrera, Music Director of the California Symphony and the Las Vegas Philharmonic. And this week is really fun. It's the first time that I've had a fellow colleague who conducts. And on top of that, we are so fortunate to have with us the music director of the Reno Philharmonic. So it's sort of an intrastate interview chat. And so please help me welcome Laura Jackson, music director of the Reno Philharmonic. Hi.
Hello, Donato. How are you?
Wonderful. It's such a treat. You know, I'm trying to think back. You know, we have been doing this thing that we do about. We're basically contemporaries, and I'm trying to remember when we first met in person. I think it was at the Nashville Conductor preview, right?
That's what I remember, yes.
Okay.
Yes. I remember I had heard about you. I even think maybe online we had chatted a little bit or sort of, you know, known of each other before that, but that was the first time we met. And I've just been one of your biggest fans ever since.
Well, and likewise, and you know, who would have imagined that here we are conducting the two orchestras that are in the state of Nevada, and
big world being small.
That's right, and you are conducting in. I'm also from Nevada, and you know, so having grown up in Las Vegas and in Reno, knowing both orchestras, it's just such a wonderful, of course, it's the typical, it's a small world story, but it's also this sort of these lovely these circles being closed that are so fun to sort of talk about. I wanted to start off with a couple of questions. I've always been curious. I know you're a violinist.
Yeah.
At what point did you, playing violin and again, we can talk about in depth, at what point did you start looking at that person in front of you thinking, you know, I'd like to try that?
It happened for me through playing in orchestra. And, you know, I had grown up, I started out as a, you know, little kid playing violin. All my dreams were about being a violinist, playing at Carnegie Hall. I was walking through a cornfield every day to go to my public school, my one hallway schoolhouse in Pennsylvania, and then in upstate New York. I lived in a little town on the lake. And so violin was my world, and I didn't have a whole lot of like a super intense musical environment around me, but I was really lucky to have a public school that had a music program. And I was lucky enough to have a violin teacher, and, you know, so I was able to propel my music studies forward. Now, in terms of getting excited about conducting and making that transition, that happened for me when I was in college at Indiana University. And I was sitting in orchestra, and I found that I would, you know, I actually missed an entrance. We were playing Mahler's Fifth Symphony, and I was listening to the woodwinds, and I was suddenly so transfixed by the beauty of what they were doing at this particular moment that I missed my entrance. And, you know, sitting on the front stand of the second violins, you know, it's not really a great idea to do that. So, you know, and then suddenly I was listening to the timpanist and how he was able to absolutely transform the momentum of the piece by the way he, you know, struck the timpani and the type of mallets that he used. So it was actually through that kind of fascination that I started studying scores or just looking at them. I didn't even know how to read them at first. You know, it's like, wait, where are the strings? I was used to reading one line. And so, you know, it's a fair amount of work to rebalance your hearing, to realize that the first violin part is really not the entire universe. It's most of the universe, but it's really not the universe.
There you go.
You know, there are usually worth listening to, you know. So that took a little while, but it was, you know, I mean, as a violinist in orchestra, as a player in orchestra, you're usually looking up at the conductor going, oh my goodness, you know, like, what is he or she doing there? You know, total idiot, you know, I can do that better. And so I wasn't fascinated with that. I was fascinated with the organism of the orchestra and how all of those disparate voices and characters of instruments go together in this miraculous way and then somehow create beauty. And then I would say the second half of it, the practical part that got me really, you know, so I was already interested in it. And then I was injured. So this was, you know, the typical player tendonitis problem. And so here I am sitting on my rear end at Indiana University and I can't play the violin for a while. And I'm sitting in orchestra and like listening. I started listening. Then I started singing in choirs as a lab rat for the choral conductors. And so then you're watching a teacher work with them going, no, what are you doing? Don't do this. Move your hands like that and ask for this and that. And then you start to realize how a conductor can mold and change and again transform by just tweaking little details. So that the fascination grew, and eventually I fell into, I don't know, whatever, flailing for a living.
I call that too. Yeah, waving your arms around for a living.
Someday we'll levitate. We can.
So I have a couple of questions. So. Or observations for those of us who are for those of you who are watching, that, you know, I started a doctorate at Indiana University, and one of the amazing things about that school is that it is just, how many orchestras? There are 6 orchestras.
When I was there, was 5.
5 or 6 orchestras. Yeah. It's the largest school of music in the world, and they do, that's right, there are 5 orchestras. They do 6 full opera productions every year. There are I think 400 freshman vocal majors alone. I mean, it's just, you are in a universe of music. And so, and the orchestras are phenomenal, at a phenomenal level. So for you to be surrounded by these beautiful sounds at that age, it had to have been really overwhelming, and also just incredibly inspiring, right?
Oh my goodness. You know, you talk about the opera program. How incredible was it to just like every Saturday night, you could just wander into this great production of some opera. I mean, I learned so much of the operatic literature just by being at IU. And I will never forget seeing Peter Grimes live for the first time there, you know, or playing Candide, or Hansel and Gretel, and you know, so between the playing experience of being thrown in, sometimes as concertmaster, having, you know, to do the bowings for an entire opera and lead the orchestra, but then just hearing them and the frequency, you could go back the next day. They really were at an incredibly high level, and the students really had a wonderful access. So it was great.
So you decided to pursue conducting as something to study. So then what happened? So,
it was a long decision. It was like, so I became fascinated with it, and while I was injured, but then my arms got better and I went back to playing. So I had a 12-year career as a violinist in Boston. And I was in I would say, the New England Freeway Philharmonic, playing in every orchestra imaginable and teaching at the same time. I was a really passionate teacher of violin at Phillips Exeter Academy. Mm-hmm. Of course, you know, an international school, kids from all over the place, and wonderful string playing, really, really wonderful level of playing. And my colleagues there were so tremendous, you know, Boston Ballet concertmaster, just some of the best players. So when we got to do faculty chamber music concerts, for instance, it was just so tremendous. It was I felt like I really learned from my colleagues, because of course at that point I was just in my early 20s. So that was a marvelous experience. And I very gradually made my way back to conducting part-time. So it started at Phillips Exeter. They needed a conductor to do the very beginning string ensemble. So these are, you know, it was about like 6 string players. This is, you know, not an enormous orchestra. And they barely knew which end of the violin to put under their chin. You know, I mean, it was, and what was kind of a relief to me was that they were so engrossed in just pulling any sound out of that thing that I could have been doing, I don't know what, I could have been doing cartwheels, and they were completely unaware that I existed. So I could do really stupid things and learn. But also I had to figure out how to communicate and how to get effect. And it wasn't by looking masterful and doing a nice beat. It was, you know, you get the train to come in on the tracks. You do whatever you have to do to make something happen. Just start and end together, you know, like that. So that was, and I'm so sorry this keeps bombing. I turned it off 25 times. And I think we're just gonna have to deal with bells in the background. Fine. Anyway, I started that way, and then an amateur chamber orchestra in Western New Hampshire opened up, the Nashua Chamber Orchestra. Mm-hmm. And I say they opened up. They were looking for a music director, and my mentor, my guru at Phillips Exeter was a wonderful violist and just a wonderfully gifted educator, teacher, pianist. Everything. She was, and conductor. She was just great. And she threw my name in because she knew I could play a stringed instrument and I was interested in conducting, and thought maybe, you know, I could help these poor folks out in Nashua. So I showed up for my audition, and they were rehearsing in the biography section of the public library. I will never forget, like, walking in and I'm like trying to make my way. I'm imagining this stage, you know, I'm like all nervous for my audition. And then it's like, no, they're downstairs. There's a little paper sign, you know, pointing there. And I walk down and I'm like going behind the stacks, you know, and like I find this little group of musicians, you know, I'm like, really? Okay. So it turned out to be the most wonderful thing. They taught me everything I know. I became their music director for 8 years, and we really built that institution. We put it on the map. We did a lot of wonderful concerts. They are still going strong. I was just the other day in touch with someone who plays in that ensemble, still played under me and is still there. And I love them with all my heart. And it was really that experience that made me jump ship for good. And the reason is because I looked around one day and I saw a grocery store clerk, a famous chemist, a librarian, a school teacher, a 12-year-old, a 90-year-old. I saw all these people, some of them driving 2 hours one way in order to come together once a week and create beauty. And there was something so incredible. I mean, I felt like, what else is there in life that does this, that pulls all these people together for this incredible experience that's about being present, that's about being fully present with each other. So I was hooked. That's really, after that, it was, you know, sure, I kept playing, and it was a little while before I had the guts to leave an entire freelance career, you know, that I built up for 12 years in New England. And then I'm in my mid-30s, and to just jump ship and say, I'm going to go do something way less practical, way more risky, and way more idiotic. My parents were so not thrilled. They were like preparing the guest room for me to move in when I failed, you know? Oh, man.
What were some of the moments where you were in studying conducting, or in your first positions as a conductor, were those aha moments in terms of the gesture meaning something that you didn't expect? In other words, you know, I remember the first time I conducted was at UNR. It was with the UNR Orchestra, and I did Smetana's Mavlast, and I remember giving the first upbeat. I'd given up, maybe done a little bit of conducting in high school, and not really, but giving that first upbeat and hearing the flutes play with the pizzicato and feeling like I really had no control of that. I gave an upbeat, but really I wasn't responsible for the sound that happened. You know what I mean? When you play, my instrument was a horn. So when I breathe and go and buzz my lips and press on a button, sound would happen, right? And it was you feel it throughout your whole body. And same thing when you play violin, same thing when you sing. But when you conduct, there's no physicalization of the sound, right? And it's a little odd.
It's not only a little odd, it's terrifying, is it not?
Right.
It's because so much of it is trust. You know, you have to really, you have to believe. You have to believe in the possibility that sound is going to come out. Have you ever had the nightmare? The nightmare that, you know, you give the big downbeat and nothing happens?
Oh yeah, that happens. Yeah.
So no, there's a lot of trust there, and even if you're conducting, you know, perhaps a young student ensemble or a very, very inexperienced ensemble, and you're not really sure if kind of the bar's right, and you're not sure they're looking at you, even though you're going to give a big cue, you know, you have to believe it. There's something. What is so crazy about conducting is that it is strangely telepathic. We do have, as conductors, we have a tremendous amount of effect on what happens. And yet, at the same time, we are absolutely helpless. And I think it's knowing that we are equally potentially damaging, and also completely out of control at the same time. I feel like that's sort of the respect that I have to bring to the situation each time I embark on that. Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean, and I think that's one of the eternal qualities that keeps us coming back, right? It's that sense of what's going to happen. But if I try this little thing or try not to do this thing, it's actually more often than that, right? It's getting rid of all of the things that we think we need to do,
right? That
ends up being most effective, right? And I think that's the lifelong fascination, aside from the fact that we're so lucky to, and I want to talk about this next, the fact that we get to learn, constantly learn. Even if it's something we've conducted many times in the past, we open up the score to a Beethoven symphony, and it's always as if it's the first time. It's like reading, you know, a wonderful book that's over and over again. You learn more about ourselves, right? And so, anyway, getting back to the idea of gesture as being something so eternally fascinating.
Yes, no, it is absolutely fascinating. And I remember the first time that I conducted professionals, and that it was actually a freelance orchestra in Boston. It was a group of people that I knew and played with, and there was somebody organized this concert for a specific benefit and asked me to conduct it. But it was the first opportunity that I had to work with high-level players that if you raise your eyebrow, they react. You know, if you do the tiniest little thing, then they will react if they think that you're giving them some sort of signal. And then, of course, you know, when you do something you wish they didn't see, they saw it, but if they're kind, they'll ignore it. That was an incredible experience, because what I realized was that my imagination was the only limitation. That if I could imagine something, this group of musicians could do it, and they would do it. And that was incredible to me, because if you are truly fascinated with all these things all these instruments coming together and the way a composer pieces them together, and you know, when you think about these composers sitting here, what they toil over to put that down on paper or in a computer, then the opportunity, the responsibility to breathe life into that, and do it properly, and do it in an organic and real way is a huge responsibility, but it's also incredible fun. I mean, I think that was the moment that I realized I was no longer limited by my own inabilities on a violin. You know, like if I didn't have a certain technique or whatever, that was my limitation and my problem. But now it was just what I could conceive of, because I have had this orchestra of wonderful players that could realize it for me. So it's I don't know, you know, you talk about, it's the next topic you brought up, which is, you know, opening a score for the second time. I think of it, I'm a cyclist, and my husband and I, especially in this pandemic situation, we're cycling a lot. And, you know, you if you do a path up and back, you see it one way as you go out, and then you come back and you see houses that somehow just appeared, or you see, you know, everything is totally different. And I think every time we open a score and work toward a performance, you know, ultimately it's about something in the life experience. It's about life itself, and we cannot avoid bringing something of ourselves to that, because that's the lens through which we experience life. So every time we come back to a piece, we have something more to bring to it, and the chance to look at those notes, and the challenge to look deeper, to go deeper, to see the nuance in a harmony, to try a new turn of phrase, spinning something a different way, bringing out a different line, that I don't know, brings out a wonderful nuance in a piece. It's really thrilling. And even to do 2 performances back to back, or 3 or 4 or 5 performances back to back, is a thrilling thing to change things.
So well said, Laura. What does it, because conducting, as you've so eloquently said, is such an interior journey. Interior, of course, in the way we prepare and study, but incredibly exterior in the way we make music with a large group of musicians. What does it mean to have a mentor or a teacher in conducting? I've always been fascinated by this, because on one day, if you ask me, can conducting truly be taught, I might say yes. And on the next day, I might say no, because it is this idea that it's such an interior journey, is it not? And every conductor's gestures and thought processes are so unique. It's every conductor has their own path to take. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on teaching conducting and being and having mentors, and how do they affect you as a conductor, and maybe how have they affected you?
You know, I feel like I've been so fortunate. The number of gracious, wonderful conductors who have extended their experience and wisdom to me in different ways along the way, the pearls of wisdom that I have taken with me, oh my goodness. You know, I studied for 4 years. I did a master's and a doctorate at University of Michigan, and Kenneth Kiesler was my teacher. And I learned a tremendous amount from him about, you know how I learned the most was sneaking into his studio at night and copying his scores. That's what I did. I literally would pick up his score, pick up mine, and I would, for like a year, I would take the score and write in everything, because what I was doing was learning how he thought. Mm-hmm. And every question he would write down, I was thinking, okay, how is he seeing this page? What information is he taking in? What order is he doing things in? How, you know, I learned so much. My actual work on the podium developed so much from looking at what he wrote in his scores. Now, of course, there are other genius conductors that don't write anything. So you can't learn from them that way. I would say my all-time hero is Robert Spano of Atlanta Symphony. And I started stalking Robert when I was in Boston, and I was just beginning to study conducting, but he would, come into town and conduct the Boston Symphony and conduct, or at BU or whatever. And one day I walked up to him. He was conducting a BU, and I just said, "Hi, my name is Laura Jackson, and I want a lesson with you." And I was so scared out of my gourd, And he said, "Sure, okay, let's hang out here after." And I'm like, "Oh my God, now I have to conduct something for him." And he made me conduct in silence, and he could tell if I couldn't hear every single line of Brahms 1 of the last movement, if I couldn't really hear it, he could tell, and he could tell that my upbeat in total silence didn't have the right kind of color. And the what I adored about his mentorship was he never tried to make me into a miniature version of him. He was always trying to ask me, "What do you want here? What is your vision here? What are you trying to do?" And then help me do that. And there were moments where just the simplicity of his confidence in me was really sustaining. When I won the assistant conducting position with the Atlanta Symphony, I'm sure, as you can relate with San Francisco and the illustrious appointments you've had, I talk about terror. To walk in for your first concert and you feel like you're up in front of musicians that have been playing whatever symphony you're about to do longer than you've been alive, and the great conductors they've been in front of, and you're just like, okay, really, I really, my version is better. You feel like an idiot, I think that there were just so many ways in which Robert, it was just his advice, the right stuff at the right moment. Also making me swim on my own and throwing me in concert, another concert, do it. He had no mercy. There was no, his motto was, you're not going to get better at doing Brahms 4 by avoiding it. So you might as well do it. And he put it on a concert and made me do it, and I'd be scared of it. I'd think, "Oh, I can't do this until I'm, 75 years old." And he's like, "How about tomorrow?" So there was something about that too, that was wonderful.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more in that I've also been so fortunate to have such incredible mentors who have given me, it's about giving you opportunity, because after all, as much as we can think about music at home and have a plan for what we would do once we had that, you can't learn anything unless you are given those opportunities. And I remember, I feel so fortunate that, and him as well, as when I first moved to San Francisco, I was with the San Francisco Opera with Maestro Donald Runnicles,
Yeah.
And he treated me like one would, and might have to describe this a little bit. The opera house system in Europe, in Germany especially, if you are an assistant conductor there, they give you you're given opportunities to conduct quite a bit, because there's so many performances, number one, but there is a pathway for younger conductors to move forward, and that's not so much the case in the United States, especially in the opera houses here. And I just remember thinking, how fortunate am I to have this opportunity to conduct at the moment's notice, or maybe not, but have this opportunity to conduct these incredible musicians, the world's greatest singers, and sink or swim. And it's these people who are mentors, but who also have trust in you. That's so special.
Exactly. Because with an organization, an institution at that level, there is no time to waste. Donald would not be throwing you in there unless he knew you were truly going to make good use of that time. Mm-hmm. So it's he doesn't suffer fools. He's just such a marvelous artist. What a colorist. Oh my goodness, total genius. I loved working with him as well. But yeah, hats off to you that you worked with him in that way.
Well, I think the opportunities we've both had are phenomenal with in terms of having these exposures, these great artists, great conductors, great musicians. Looking at a score now, whether it's something you know really well, you've conducted many times, or, and this is the next topic I'd like for us to talk about, a new piece of music, something that you've helped bring in to the world, and you've received this new piece of music in the mail, and you see this score, and you open it for the first time. Your eyes are the first eyes to see this score, other than the composer. What's the process by which you start learning this music?
Oh my goodness. Isn't that like one of the most incredible of life's experiences?
You smell the paper.
In the mail, and you're the first one to open it. It's the baby coming out of the womb, you know? I mean, it's unbelievable. And and it's always after years of planning for this commissioning project. You know, it's after the concept, and then you find the right composer for the project, and then you have to, you know, get a whole team of your institution around it, and you fundraise and blah, blah, blah. You have to shape it, how big, how long, how whatever it's going to be. So it takes years to get to this moment. And then usually it's happening like 2 or 3 weeks after the deadline when it's supposed to be handed to you. So you know, because they've had their burst of genius, the composers, you know, after the deadline. So then it's like, okay, we have to learn this and do this tomorrow. And of course you want to know it deeper than you've known anything before, because you have the privilege of being the first one to breathe life into this thing. So it's the, oh my gosh, I think of this with the last commissioning project that I did. So in Reno, I've been so fortunate to have an institution that has really gotten behind and excited about bringing new works into the world. And we've had 3 composers in residence, and the third of which, so we did Sean Shepard and Michael Gandolfi, and then Joe Tien. And this piece called Transcend that Joe Tien wrote and we premiered last spring as the culminating event of our 50th anniversary, the Reno Phil's 50th anniversary. Oh my goodness. It was a piece that was not only celebrating the Reno Phil, but it was commemorating the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad. And this was, you know, the first railroad built to bring together East and West. And President Lincoln was trying at the same time to bring together North and South. So this was a momentous event for the nation, completing this railroad. And to what was so cool about the way we did the project was we got 13 orchestras to do it with us that were along the railroad route. So to be opening that score and knowing that this is the beginning, this is at the beginning of the train track, and we're going to do this world premiere performance, and then it's going to travel around. I mean, those performances are supposed to still be ongoing. Now they're delayed because concerts are happening right now. But when I got that, I cried. I mean, I cried. I was at my piano, and the first thing that happened was I was so excited to be looking at this that I was pulling the pages, that I actually ripped a page and then I cried. I never told Joe that I did that. I was like, horrible. I was like, I hurt the baby, you know.
So, okay, this is wonderful because we're both passionate about new pieces of music and helping new pieces come to life through commissions with our institutions. How do you go about deciding who will be your partner, who will be the composer in these projects, who becomes a resident composer of the Reno Philharmonic or whatever institution you're working with? What's that process like for you?
Well, you know, I'm always building relationships with composers and always on the lookout. They fascinate me. I think they are miraculous beings. I want to be around them. I want to know them. They are, a large part of the reason this art form exists. And they are the voice of our consciousness now. They are our mirror as we look at ourselves in our world. And so I am always meeting them and looking at their music and listening to their music. And I have lists and lists of composers and the different types of things that they write. And then in terms of choosing a project, it's a very it's a really tricky thing. You have to get it right, because what I'm always looking for is something that my community in Reno can really own and feel like. It's not like medicine. New music is not going to be like medicine. It's like, oh my gosh, the Transcontinental Railroad is something that made Reno Reno. It has a huge anniversary. Wouldn't it be cool to celebrate our city and celebrate that event in history, to get everybody who's fascinated with trains around us also fascinated in this work and in this project? And so there were all these hooks, these in points, these, where people could decide that they want to come and experience this piece, even if they weren't so used to listening to symphonic music. So I would choose a piece that has meaning, that extra musical meaning. And then in terms of the composer, I'm always looking for a composer that has a unique voice, that has found, of course that is a very subjective thing for me to decide, but I need to feel as though they're not just writing pretty notes that'll sell well. They're writing from a place that is uniquely theirs, that is a place of depth where they are, that it's genuine, that my musicians are going to respect, that they're going to sit up straight and play hard and dig into that music and give it everything they have. And at the same time, when I perform that on the stage and an audience is hearing it for the first time, they are also going to be able to relate to it. So it's a combination of individuality, of chops, musical chops and depth, an imagination and ability to use the tools in an orchestra and put that on paper and into a concept, and also accessibility, so that they can connect to an audience at the same time. The connection to me is paramount. If it's great music, it's like the tree that falls in the forest. If it's great music that nobody can relate to or hears or cares about, then it hasn't done its job. It's supposed to connect. It is the connective tissue. So the connection has to happen. And I will never forget the moment. Every time you do a successful premiere, it's the most exciting thing that you've ever done in your whole life. But when we did the world premiere of Transcend, and when Joe came up on stage at the end of the performance, and everybody went bananas. And it was the audience, seeing the audience in Reno go crazy for this new piece and this composer as though he was a rock star. I just was beside myself with joy. It was a great moment.
We have a clip of this incredible piece by Joe, Transcend. Let's listen to a little bit of it. What are we going to hear?
So the first clip is the climax of the first movement, and so it's a 3-movement work, and the first movement is pulse, and what he's capturing here are the teams of workers from the Central Pacific Railroad and the Union Pacific Railroad working furiously from either end in a race to get to Promontory Point first. And there's this fast, furious, no holds barred, all dangers taken, just throw things down and get it done. And there's a man versus nature kind of fury as they're tearing through the Sierra Nevada, the mountain range, just blasting their dynamite sticks going off. And it's just this fast and furious pace of the workers laying the track.
Let's listen. Really powerful music. Tell us a little bit more about Zhou Tian. Where did he study? Does he live in the United States?
He lives in the United States now. He was born in China. He moved over here at 18, 19, studied at Curtis and Juilliard. I got to know him through the wonderful, great composer Joseph Haydn. When now we were talking about mentors, MTT and Robert Spano, both huge with contemporary music. And so during my years as assistant conductor under Robert, Jennifer Haydn was one of the composers that we did a lot of her works, and Robert would commission her fairly frequently, and we would record. So I felt like she was like my big sister, and we would be in the booth together, and I learned so much about looking at scores for the first time and about recording and everything from being next to her. But she is an advisor. And I will check in with her often and say, who's up and coming? Because she's a wonderful mentor. And she's a wonderful mentor to young composers as well as just to people. And so she told me about Joe, and this is way back. This is, I don't know, 2007 or 8. And I started, I just kind of, started listening to his music. I checked out his website and just kind of like put it on the back burner and watched. And what I found is that he's so prolific, he's so virtuosic, he's the variety in his writing, the variety in his imagination. I just was really taken, and I started performing his works, the Palace of Perfections, Palace of Nine Perfections. There are a few, like 2 or 3 different works that I've performed with various orchestras, and they've always worked in both ways. They work with the orchestra and they work with the audience. And I've also, I brought him to town to speak from the stage. And I did that when I guest conducted here in Michigan once, and then, somewhere else, can't remember. And he was so eloquent, succinct, and communicative from the stage that audiences really loved him that way. So he was just like the home run guy. He was at SUNY Purchase on the faculty for a while there, and now he's at Michigan State. So he is right in Michigan. And, I've been knowing him and sort of bringing him various places from New York, and now he's sort of down the road for me.
Wonderful. What about this second clip of Transcend? What will we hear next?
So what Joe did with the third movement is really ingenious. He wrote in he used Morse code as it was used in one of the first transcontinental telegraphs. So when at Promontory Point, when the Golden Spike was struck, the railroad was finally completed. One of the very first national telegraphs was sent out 4 letters, DONE, in Morse code. And so he took the rhythm of done in Morse code and put it as the initial rhythm of the movement. And what you'll hear here is it's sort of the culmination. There's a sweeping theme, and then it comes in the xylophone and the flute. You'll hear the Morse code melody, and then it comes to a huge conclusion at the end.
Great. Let's listen. It's such an exciting piece.
It makes me miss my musicians. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
We're all missing our colleagues so much right now.
I know.
And they sound really, boy, you've done such a wonderful job with them over the years. They really sound great.
I'm so proud of the work we've done together, and they're amazing musicians, amazing talents, and I'm honored to work with them. It's great.
One of the things that, one of the wonderful things that you've been able to do with this piece and other commissions is to develop what we call a consortium of orchestras, because I think one of the unfortunate aspects of when you commission a piece often by a composer is that if you've commissioned it, play it and perform it that one time. And then that piece sort of goes onto the shelf of the music library down in the basement. And it has this suspended animation for eternity often. And there's so many pieces that I'm sure that are in the libraries of various orchestras around the country that more than deserve to be heard again.
I know.
But when you have a consortium of orchestras, in this case, you said there are 13 orchestras that have agreed. That means that once we get back together again, that this piece will at least be performed by 13 different orchestras around the country. And they will all have, because you've chosen orchestras that were along the Transcontinental Railroad, they'll be able to tell the same story that the Reno Philharmonic did, which is so important in a commission, especially today with regional orchestra.
Yeah, it's so gratifying to me to have a work come out of the biggest little city, come out of Reno, and for it to contribute something substantive to the national, canon of new works, and for it to be of value, of course it's of value, but for it to actually be put on seasons with Utah Symphony, Omaha Symphony, Chicago Youth, Cheyenne, Boise, just on and on and on with all these orchestras, and as a tool for them to connect with their communities, that is really, really gratifying. And that third movement with the Morse code, we have found that it works great on a youth concert. It's like a 4-minute, a piece that you can extract. And it's just brilliant that way. So I think that and then you can use it as a teaching tool about all kinds of aspects of American history. So it's I find it incredibly gratifying to not only commission and bring works to life, but then to contribute to something larger than just our community. Set that little, it's like you put the little memory in the bottle and you send it off, and you have a new piece, and it happens, you put it out into the ether in the Sierra Nevada, and then you send it off, and it goes tromping around, and I find that really exciting. And also it helps the composers. It helps get them out there. It helps, Joe is now Grammy nominated and was already Grammy nominated before our performance. So I take zero credit for that. But there were a lot of administrators amongst the orchestras that came on as part of that commission that did not know his work previous to this and were really thrilled by it. So I find that, really, really wonderful. Here, another composer that I worked with also in the same season, Carlos Simon. He's an incredible young talent. He wrote a piece that was very special about his own upbringing in a Southern Baptist church, and it's called Amen. And he's African American. It's really depicting a gospel church service. And he is from a whole line of preachers. And so his depictions in this piece they're so amazing. The 3 trombones stand up and start wailing away. And Carlos is like, that's the gospel singer, that's the this and that. And then there's a blues walk going. And that just everything that he does is so imaginative and amazing, and just brings us right into his church and into his family. And it's so deeply personal. And the piece already existed in concert band version, but what I did was I actually personally commissioned the orchestral version of that piece. And I called up Michael Morgan, and he did it with Gateways, and also Ed Yim in New York with American Composers Orchestra. And I said, hey, do a little consortium with me. So the three of us, I mean, it also, the other reality, as you and I are with these smaller regional orchestras, it's incredibly helpful to have a consortium because they also help pay the bills, you know? I mean, if you can get it, it helps the composer, it helps the notoriety of your orchestra, but it also just simply helps with the cost, right?
We talked a little bit about this in our email exchange. You know, we were, as we mentioned before, both fortunate to work for as assistant conductors for wonderful institutions that in some ways are like seemingly anything can be possible, is possible. And then we go out into the world and we become music directors of regional orchestras, and we think, okay, well, this is, I'm actually telling my story, but I think, okay, I can just do, it's just a miniature version of what I did, what was happening at the San Francisco Symphony. It's just a little smaller, and it's not quite that.
Kind of a staff of 85,
So my question to you is, and you've touched upon this already, what are some of the differences and some of the strengths of being a music director of a regional orchestra? Some of the things that make that so unique and different from what being a music director of a major symphony orchestra might be.
Well, I mean, I can only speak from the experience of doing what I've done, and that's because I've never been music director of an $80 million budget orchestra. But what I can say, the beauty of working with a smaller orchestra is that it is so in Reno. I so value the way that the institution keeps its ear to the ground with the community, that it just can't exist without a very a vibrant connection between the people that they're serving. Now, really, no orchestra can. But what I value is that we have various committees. We have an incredible staff, an absolutely incredible. I have a fabulous partner, Tim Young, president and CEO, and the staff that we work with is just, they're so incredibly talented. And because it is a staff, of maybe 8 instead of, 75, there aren't so many silos. We are really coming to the table. I mean, in this whole pandemic, we have been getting together on Zoom 3 times a week, all of us. And so we are a family, we are a team, we are brainstorming. We're, I don't know, we are surveying all the time. We're talking to people, we're calling, we're picking up the phone and we're talking to our constituents. We're figuring out how to connect. And because we are smaller and leaner and meaner, we can be flexible. And as long as we are creative, as long as we look at whatever comes at us, and we think, where is the opportunity here? How can we better serve? How can we better connect? Then I think there is a value in being nimble and being small, because you can turn those corners more easily. There isn't such a rut of tradition. This is the one of the things I valued so much is the attitude. I don't know if it's just in the Southwest or just, maybe I'm just lucky with Reno Phil, but it's a why not kind of attitude. Why not? Why not?
Absolutely true.
It's wonderful.
It's wonderful. Yes. Clean slate. I have to commend you and you and your team and Tim and the entire Reno Philharmonic. A couple of weeks ago, you made what I shared this with everyone. Your announcement was the one positive announcement of a day of what I call doom and gloom in our industry. Everyone else was mentioning, how things had to be shut down and with heartbreak and sadness, and all those things are true. But your announcement about what you were going to do for the future and how you were going to stay engaged, and yes, things will be different. This is the message that was the one message that I just thought should have been shared with the world. So I just want to commend you on that, because it was excellent.
Thank you. Yeah, it was just killing us to continue to disappoint our public and our constituents and our subscribers, and just say, no, canceled, postponed, sorry, can't do that, can't do that. You're never going to get that. You paid for that, but we're going to give you this. No, 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 no. We said all these wonderful concerts that you can't wait to hear for next season, we're just going to put them off a little longer, put them for the following season, all of them, bang, move them. And then what we're going to do for this next season, rather than cancel, rather than reschedule, rather than keep your money for this and give you that, we are going to rebuild, and we're going to promise you what we know we can deliver. We're going to build one at a time. We're going to let you know like 8 weeks before, and it's going to be, you know, the new season 52. It's going to be the season of surprise, the season of wonder, and it's going to be incredibly creative and exciting, just different.
I love it. Kudos, congratulations on that. That was the way. What's the message that should be shared?
It's, you know, we all have to be looking for opportunities, and there are opportunities in this situation, and you know, we're all going to come out of this stronger orchestras, stronger organizations, stronger teams, and stronger creative leaders. I know it.
What are some of the things that you have in your years now? How many years have you been at the Reno Philharmonic? It's
11 years.
11. That's
11 years.
Incredible.
Yes.
It's great. You know, there's this rather silly number of 10 years. You know, your music director should, and you know, having been with very successful music directorships of MTT at San Francisco Symphony, Donald Runnicles at San Francisco Opera, that far exceeded that, and had such an incredible. These partnerships were so meaningful over the course of way longer than 10 years. What are some of the things that you still would like to achieve, and some of the dreams you have now with the Reno Philharmonic that you may not have had when you began?
Oh my goodness. You know, for me, it's all about community and connection. And I see us, we are on a bridge right now in this season, in this moment. We are on a bridge between what used to be and what will become, what the new world is going to be. It's going to be an altered landscape. It's going to be a whole new world. And for me, it is broadening our bridge so that the people that we are meaningful to and the ways in which we serve them broaden and deepen. So, and when I mention altered landscape, I actually have a commissioning project that is going to happen. It was in the works before, and it's based on a photographic collection that the Nevada Museum of Art has put the photographic exhibit, put the museum on the map. It is called Altered Landscape. And we are building a piece that is both about that landscape, exploring the intersection of man and nature, but at the same time exploring the term altered landscape as post-pandemic. Where are we moving toward? How do we process this experience? And I think that a new work coming out of this, what that can help us do, that can help us, you know, ground us. Art, we have the opportunity for art to truly be meaningful. Because all of our habits have been blown up. They've been absolutely blown up. And so we have to build back one brick at a time. And that's by looking at how can we serve? How can art serve? And who can we serve? And making sure that we don't fall back into the habits of doing classical music in the ways that we have, in the places that we have, because they're comfortable, because they're known for the same narrow band of constituents. But it's how can we use this art form to make the streets of our city into not just a place, but a neighborhood and a home? And how can it not only bring people together to exist there, but how can it help them thrive? These are the questions.
I'm on board. I'm on board. Laura, we had our these grand plans of sharing another piece of music, which I definitely want to do. You know what we will do? We'll put a link to that performance in the comments so they can see it.
Sure.
Describe the piece that we were going to play now, but we've run out of time. But what's Michael?
A performance that was also part of our 50th anniversary season. It's a performance with the world great baritone Thomas Hansen, and he's singing a piece by Michael Dougherty called "Letters from Lincoln." So it is literally it's a 30-minute work of Lincoln's letters and words and speeches. The last movement of the entire work is a setting of the Gettysburg Address, and it's fantastic. And if you want to listen to the entire thing, you can go to hamsongfoundation.org, and you'll hear the whole thing. However, the little clip I gave you is one movement where Lincoln is writing a letter to the mother of 5 of her sons who have died in battle. Wow. And it is just heartbreaking and wonderful and so beautiful. And the way that Michael Dougherty sets these words and the way that Thomas Hansen delivers them, it's so worth hearing. So yes, please take a listen.
Can't wait. Laura, thank you so much for being our guest today. What a treat and a pleasure and inspirational.
Always a pleasure. I just wish we had a second hour and I want to interview you. Have you talk more? No. Just wanting to see you.
Love to see you too. And take care. All the best.
All right. You
Stay
too.
safe. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.